Good afternoon. Thank you for being with us. Israeli forces say that they have withdrawn from the Al-Shifa hospital in Gaza after a 2-week operation there. The Israeli Defense Force claims it has been one of their most successful interventions of the conflict so far. But Palestinian residents say that destruction has been left behind. Israel has long accused Hamas of using hospitals for military purposes, something that the Hamas-run health ministry in Gaza denies. Let's get some analysis on this by bringing in our military analyst, Sean Bell. Sean, good afternoon to you. Thank you very much for being with us. So what's happening at Al-Shifa? What do we know?
Yeah, good afternoon, Kamali. The IDF claims they've started the withdrawal out of Al-Shifa hospital after two weeks of operations there out of what Prime Minister Netanyahu describes as a terrorist lair. Al-Shifa is quite close to the northern end of Gaza. Tanks and vehicles have been seen leaving the site as witness to it. The IDF claim it's been the most successful operation of the 6 months to date. We're seeing some of the video footage that they've released here. They claim they've arrested 500 of Hamas fighters. They claim they've killed 200, seized weapons, gained intelligence, but also $3 million worth of currency has been taken. Now, it's worth looking back. The Al-Shifa, to give an idea of the scale of this is not just a single building, it's a huge complex, and that's almost certainly why it's taken 2 weeks to do any clearing operation here. The IDF spokesman, Daniel Hagari, said that Hamas and the Islamic Jihad were both using this as a headquarters in northern Gaza. We've got some before and after pictures here. On your left by you, that's a walkway that links the emergency department with the surgery. This is what it looks like after the 2 weeks of fighting. We've got another picture, the before and after of the actual special surgery department here, and the after picture, it's just been devastated. And actually, there's also some footage which we're able to show you of some of the Sky team that's been on the ground there, just showing the scale of destruction. Now, the Hamas has said they weren't using the hospital, but it's really difficult to see why Israelis would go and spend a 2-week operation if they weren't there. And finally, the head of the World Health Organization described the attack by the Israelis as a siege. They said that 21 patients have died and 107 are now left in precarious position in a temporary building.
Now, as we look at these pictures, it's just completely devastating, isn't it?
It is.
The United States has agreed to send more weapons to the Israelis.
Yeah, this is an interesting part of the story because it's gone a bit under the wire at the moment. But the Americans have been providing military support for decades. And the latest package of aid is $3 billion worth of aid. We understand it includes 25 F-35 fighters, jets, 2,300 bombs. America provides about 70% of the weapons that go to Israel. Interestingly, Germany provides the other 28%. And also, US has some stockpiles in Israel as well, probably if they ever have to go in and reinforce. It's quite topical because the International Court of Justice on the 26th of January said Israel must do more to protect the civilian population. And what that means is any nations that are providing weapons to Israel, if they are going to be used in violation of international law, then they're breaking international law as well. And that's why there are some nations such as Canada, Japan and Spain that have decided to stop export of weapons. Also, the Netherlands, who supply spare parts for the F-35 that we've got shown here, they've stopped exporting those. The trouble is, and these have been used for bombing campaigns over Gaza, the problem is that the Israelis operate F-15s and F-16s as well as these platforms. And, of course, the US has the biggest single fleet of these F-35 fighters. So whilst it's a political gesture to stop arms sales, in reality, it won't have any impact on Israel's ability to prosecute the campaign.
Interesting. And Sean, how does all this play into negotiations that are ongoing in the Egyptian capital, Cairo?
Well, if you remember when the UN Security Council resolution was passed, that effectively was seen as drawing the war to an end in Gaza. So what's interesting is why the US is now providing military support and actually has been providing tactics support as well. And part of that is because, as a result of the UN Security Council, Hamas would have felt emboldened because if you stop the war and they've still got 4 battalions of Hamas fighters in Gaza, then they've survived. Now, that's why Prime Minister Netanyahu withdrew from a meeting in the US and withdrew his negotiators from Cairo. But, of course, what's happened since is the pause will end. This operational pause will end at the end of Ramadan, expected to be 9th of April, just over a week's time. And, of course, Netanyahu can then push on, and with apparent American support. That emboldens his position when it comes to negotiations, and he's also returned his negotiators yesterday. But what's interesting is Hamas is almost certainly finished in Gaza. The question is whether they get killed there or whether they can negotiate a release. International community determined to get them to negotiate a release. Also, we're seeing some of the protests here in Tel Aviv, even the population of Israel saying more needs to be done to get the hostages out and putting pressure to oust Prime Minister Netanyahu, despite the fact he's recovering from his hernia operation. It's going to be a fascinating, as we approach the deadline of the 9th of April, to see whether these negotiations actually bring the war to an end or whether we're facing a very bloody offensive into Rafah.
OK, Sean, for now, appreciate that. Thank you.